the legacy that Pope Francis has left behind is something that we will remember for generations to come. He's been, of course, the Pope for over 10 years now, and is known to have taken steps, really, that was more inclusive, Shashank, and that perhaps is the biggest legacy that Pope Francis leaves. He was someone who took steps to ensure more women were part of the church. He was also someone who very publicly made comments about members of the LGBTQ community as well. So, those are just some highlights that I remember of the legacy that Pope Francis leaves behind now.
You're absolutely right. In fact, Pope Francis very much seemed to be on the liberal wing of the Catholic Church. He was someone who was determined to move the Catholic Church into the 21st century, was seen as very liberal on a number of social issues. He expanded, of course, the Catholic Church's reach into Asia, including into the Middle East as well, to the point where there is a serious conversation now that the next Pope could in fact be someone who comes not from Europe nor from the Western world, but someone who could come from Asia, perhaps from Africa. There's a conversation there going on, and part of that is, I think, his legacy of pushing much more liberal reforms in the church. You're right, he also pushed for more inclusive policies towards people from LGBTQ communities. He apologized for the Catholic Church's role, perhaps given its past, particularly when it came to indigenous peoples across the world. He was also someone who was active in political issues. He was also someone who was a noted critic of, for example, President Donald Trump's policies on immigration. So, someone who, whether it was on social issues or political issues, really took a stand on a number of key issues and has left, at least among recent popes, very much a lasting legacy that people around the world, including here in India, seem to acknowledge greatly.
And, while we talk about the legacy of Pope Francis, who's unfortunately left us at the age of 88, I just also again want to put the focus on his last message on the occasion of Easter. As always, there was a message of peace. He referred to all of us as children of God. And that tells you really what Pope Francis stood for, Shashank, that his last message was again for a future of peace, as he put it, to call a ceasefire, and also pushing for, in fact, an end to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
No, absolutely. I think that this was very much his view that he wanted an end to hostilities. He was talking about Gaza. He talked about the problems in Israel and Palestine. He talked about the conflict in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen, in Ukraine. He was someone who, right at the end, of course, kept pushing really on the resolution of a number of key global conflicts. He was seen as very active in using his influence as really the head of the Catholic Church, really one of the most influential organizations in the world, to push for peace, to intervene sometimes in diplomatic and political and social issues all over the world. It was not always very popular, but it was something he stuck with very, very closely. In his last message, he also talked about conflicts in Africa, in the Congo, in Sudan, and so on and so forth. Again, a part of the world where Christianity and the Catholic Church's role continues to remain very, very respected and very, very powerful. So absolutely, I think that he leaves that legacy of pushing for peace, of intervening and using his religious influence on key social, religious, moral, and political issues. And that leaves, of course, a difficult act for his successor to follow.
Unfortunate news that's come in. Pope Francis was suffering from a severe bout of pneumonia. But there was hope. The last images that came in, we're showing you those, were from yesterday on Easter, when you had Vice President Vance, who incidentally is in India right now. Vice President Vance met with Pope Francis just yesterday at the Vatican. And you can see Pope Francis there seemingly doing well. All of these images, along with what we saw on Easter, when you had Pope Francis interacting with over 35,000 of his believers, all of that gave hope that he was very much on the road to recovery. And now, unfortunately, Vatican confirming that he passed away at his residence. Also, at this point, the focus will be, Shashank, on the process, how the Pope is chosen, who the next Pope will be. Essentially, it's chosen by, the Papal Conclave. It's a gathering, of course, of cardinals. Can you just explain that process to us?
Absolutely. So the procedure is that there will be now a period of sede vacante, which is basically a period where no one reigns as a pope. At this point in time, the Catholic Church is really in the hands of the College of Cardinals. After that, you move into a conclave, which basically gathers a number of cardinals from all over the world together in in Vatican City to do a secret vote, after which there will be a number of ballots to select the next pope, and of course you need a two-thirds majority to be elected the next pope. This is a process that will play out over the next couple of weeks, but I have to point out that at this point in time there is a lot of speculation about who possibly could succeed Pope Francis as the next pope. In fact, a lot of speculation right now that in fact there are speculations that of course we could finally see a pope coming not from the Western world but perhaps from the Philippines, from Ghana, from the Congo, from South Korea. In fact, that is the range and the influence of the Catholic Church at this point in time. And in fact, we were seeing perhaps possibly that the next pope could in fact be someone who comes not from the Western world but from Asia or perhaps from Africa. So that is going to be a process that is going to be extremely closely watched now, because it will be a very, very key indicator of how much the reforms in the church have brought about lasting change and how much the Catholic Church itself is open to change and influence from other parts of the world where Catholicism has spread.
Okay, so the process, of course, will kick in a few days, but first there will be a state of mourning for the next few days as everyone, particularly members of the Christian community, will be mourning the loss of Pope Francis, remembering his legacy and all that he's done for the Christian community as the head of the worldwide Catholic Church for the last many years. For over a decade, Pope Francis has been the head of the Vatican, has been the Pope, and he leaves behind a very, very rich legacy. Images also, and let me just show you really the last visuals that came in, videos of Pope Francis meeting with J.D. Vance. Right after that, he was also part of the Easter procession. And that itself tells you what the message is, that Pope Francis ensured that till his last breath, he was there for his people. He was there to bless them.